Hello viewers, welcome to Malhar's Chess Academy. In this session, I am going to discuss about how you can achieve a checkmate using a queen and a king. Now, this kind of checkmate is also a type of fundamental checkmate because you are having a queen, a king, but the opponent is having only his king with him. So, delivering a checkmate is pretty easier in such scenarios. Now, whenever a beginner is playing chess, he does have a queen, but he's unable to achieve a checkmate. He can do it many of the times, but few just lose their patience, and in this process, they lose a half of point. The reason behind this is instead of achieving a checkmate, they go for giving a stalemate. Now, stalemate basically is the position where the king is not in check and at the very same time he doesn't have any squares to move. I will be discussing about such kind of positions later on, but as of now I will just give you an idea how checkmate can be achieved using a king, a queen over here. So now, as we all know that queen is the most powerful piece on the board, the reason behind it is it controls many squares. Over here, you can see that the queen is controlling these many squares. So the king obviously has to be very careful while moving because in an offline mode, many a times the beginners they move their king into the area where queen is controlling and they can be given an illegal move. Now suppose if you are having a queen and you need to deliver a checkmate, you need to keep in mind the basic rule. First of all, you need to push the king to the edge of board. Now the edge of board can be anywhere in the A file, H file, first rank or eighth rank. Okay. So this particular area or the E file, H file, first rank and eighth rank is usually termed as the edge of the board. And now achieving a checkmate will be more like pushing the king towards the edge of the board and delivering a checkmate. So basically now it's white to move, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the queen to this square. Okay. So moving the queen to the square actually cuts the squares of the king. Okay. Now the king only has these many squares to move. Simply what we have done is we have blocked the squares of the king. Now the king can move to any of these squares as highlighted. Suppose if he moves to this square, what we can do is we can again move the queen to this square, move the queen over here, give the king a check, or we can move the king. Now the best idea is to keep these squares blocked. Okay, you are not going to allow the king to escape from this particular box. What we can do over here is I am simply going to move the king one square ahead. This is not necessary. You can even move the queen to this square. You can move the queen to this square. But improving the position of the king is also very important. Now the king, obviously, he would move to this particular area or he would get back. Now always keep in mind, if the king is getting back, what you need to do is you need to push the king so that the king automatically will be getting to the edge of the board. Now suppose if the king is moving into this area, what we can do is we can simply again cut the squares of the king, either by placing the queen on f3 or e4. Say, let us keep the queen on e4. Now the number of squares available for king have been again reduced. Okay, now the king will be moving to one of the squares. Say for example he moves to f6. Now you can improve the position of king and allow the king to move to a particular square. Now again suppose he has moved to this area. Simply block the squares. Okay, you are going to cut the squares now. You have moved your king. Now the queen has moved to this area. So the squares have been reduced. The number of squares available for the king are only this square, this square, this one, and this one. Okay. So basically only 4 squares are available for the king. Let us say the king has moved to this area. Now, what you can do over here? Simply cut the squares. Okay, this is the best thing that you can do. Alternatively, you can move the king ahead and just allow the opponent to make a mistake. Suppose you have moved your king to f4. Now opponent is having only few squares with him. Suppose if he moves to this area. Okay, that is g7. Move your king to g5. If the opponent thinks that the player is a beginner and he can give me half a point by giving a stalemate, he will move to f8. Now, the most important thing over here is that do not move your king. Okay, I will repeat again. Do not move your king to either g6 or f6. The reason behind this is that you are going to give opponent half a point by achieving a stalemate. If you move your king to g6, the king, the queen is actually blocking these squares. Okay, and if you're moving your king to even s6 is not a good move because you'd end up doing the same thing. If your king is moving to g6, the king can't move in g8. He can't get close to the king. He can't move to e8, and that will be a stalemate. If the king moves to f6 or h6, the result would be the same. So just you need to keep in mind that if such scenario occurs on your board, don't move your king. You can simply move the queen so that the king will have only 3 squares with him to move. Okay, so king obviously is going to move to this square. Now you can move your king to g6. If the king moves to f7, there are 2 ways by which you can achieve a checkmate. The first way is by moving the queen to d8, and the second one is by moving the queen to f7. Either of these are going to result into a checkmate. Okay, let us say for example, move the queen to d8. So this is a checkmate. And if I am going to move the queen to this square, it is f7. even that is going to be a checkmate. Okay, but as I told you, you need to keep in mind that you're not going to allow your opponent to get half a point. And how you can recognize if stalemate is going to happen, you can just see the position of the queen, the king, and your opponent's king. If the queen is just a knight's move away from your opponent's king, and if your king is near to the queen and the opponent's king is on the edge of board, it is going to be a stalemate. So you need to move your queen at that time. Okay, this is very important for you to understand. You need to move the queen at that time. Just put it on the 7th rank or 2nd rank so that it would be easier for you to achieve a checkmate. Thank you.